What's up, Tim Sykes, millionaire mentor and trader here. Sad video, but very important video for you to watch and for you to learn the lessons. Trading is not an exact science, but as you can see from me and my top students, you can make millions. You can start with a few thousand. It adds up miraculously or seemingly miraculously over time. I've had a lot of students who have taken a few thousand, turn it into, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, now millions, now even tens of millions. Remember, Tim Grattani, my top student, while I'm filming this video, he's taken 1,500 and turned it into over 13 million. So that's pretty amazing so far. But I mean, he's an exception, right? Like, don't think like everyone's going to turn 1,500 into 13 million. He's made double what I've made in half the time. Most traders lose. I don't know if you realize this, 90% of traders lose. So not only do my top students do the seemingly impossible, I mean, we buck the trend. If you actually want to learn from me and all of my top students, click the link below. I'm going to include a link to my challenge. This is where all my top students come from. They get all my DVDs, all my video lessons, commentary, a separate chat room, which actually has, really better traders, better students. And then also we have, live webinars every week, 2, 3, sometimes 4 live webinars from me and my top students. Sometimes Q&A, sometimes live trading, but you learn from a group of people. And this is why the challenge is so great, because it's not just like everyone buys at one price. Like, some people like to dip buy, some people like buying breakouts, some people like short selling. I will say that even though I've made millions going long and going short, in 2020, I've hardly ever shorted. I think I might have made like 2 or 3 short trades the entire year versus, hundreds of trades on the long side. Shorting is very crowded and it's very dangerous. A lot of unprepared traders are shorting. I've had some top students of mine leave the challenge and they're like, you know what, Tim, like, you don't really short anymore. This is what we focus on. And I'm like, I think that's very risky. I think that's a mistake. I can only guide you. I'm trying to create the most millionaires. I'm trying to create the most lasting millionaires. It does me no good when a student or even a non-student blows up, because that's just like, oh, penny stocks are so dangerous. Trading is so dangerous. Trading and penny stocks are only as dangerous as you make them. If you trade scared, the way that me and all of my top students do, aside from Tim Grattani, but once you make 13 million, then you cannot be such a coward anymore. All of my other students and I trade small. We realize we can lose on any trade, and trading scared makes trading not so scary. And this is just like a brief overview of like some of my thoughts. It really changes on every play. You could be more aggressive, be more conservative. But I like teaching you the rules. And again, if you're serious, click the link below in my challenge. So some of you might be asking like, oh, you said this was going to be a sad video. I'm going to read this student's tweet, this former student. So again, I'm like training wheels. You can learn my rules, you can ignore my rules, you can learn my rules for a little bit and then ignore them. All I try to do is pass down rules that I've learned the hard way over 20 plus years. Like I said, once you make 13 million, then you can be a little more, or, I think when Tim Grattani made like 3 million, he was a little more aggressive. But once you make millions, then you can get more aggressive. But I would encourage you to stay conservative, especially when you've made, 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand, even 400 or 500 grand. A lot of people think, oh, if I make 400 or 500 grand, I know everything. Not at all. So this former challenge student, I'm not going to name him. I'm not trying to like rub salt in the wounds. I just want, his experience to be a lesson to you. And I think he would even agree. Like, if he was sitting here next to me, like he would be like, yeah, use my life or my life lessons as, lessons for your students. So he wrote this tweet. He had turned like 2 grand, I believe, into over 400 grand. And he was in my challenge, but then he, like I said, he gravitated more towards short selling only, which a lot of, some students do. And I'm like, yo, I think that's very dangerous. I'm not trying to, rain on anybody's parade. I want more successful students, but I don't think short sellers understand the risks. I know there are short sellers out there where they're like, it's so easy, Tim. You have so many video lessons. You talk so much. You just like hearing yourself talk. I don't like hearing myself talk. My voice is hurting because I'm filming so many videos. But I do believe that if you are unprepared, if you don't know the risks, then trading can be very scary. And I want to help you avoid what happened to this one former student of mine. Some people will say, oh, like he learned from you, he learned all the wrong stuff. No, like he learned the basics from me, and when he was profiting, like that was good. But then again, he also made a lot of money just through short selling. And I do believe that you can make money through short selling, but I also believe that you can't control the risk a lot of the times. And a lot of these big short sellers, I call them like the new promoters because they're not telling you the full story. I'm grateful for promoters. I'm grateful for short sellers because promoters spike stocks that probably don't deserve to spike up that much. Short sellers spike stocks when they get squeezed, and that creates amazing opportunities for longs too. So while I'm grateful for the shorts, I'm grateful for the promoters, I also have to warn against the BS. So this one student said, the last few weeks have been tough, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'll read most of it. I felt myself spiraling out of control. I was pushing size like I never pushed before. On some trades, I was going all in. My discipline kept getting worse. The larger I traded, the worse my discipline got. I began taking huge losses. I was getting mentally exhausted. Getting up in the morning became tougher. I had removed my max loss in my account so that it wouldn't limit how much I could size. I was completely aware of my emotional, mental, and physical state, and I knew I had a gut feeling if I kept going, I would get burned really bad. So understand, this tweet was in reaction to a big loss. Hindsight is 20/20. So he's saying like he was going the wrong way and he felt it, but he didn't change. So this is a good lesson where if you start to get mentally exhausted, there's a reason why Tim Grittani made $3 million earlier this year and then just took the last 3 months off. He was exhausted. That was his biggest year ever. But if you start getting exhausted, if you take away your max loss, if you see like your losses getting bigger, that's not trending in the right direction. If you look through 20 years of my trades, you can see my losses are rather controlled. I have had big losses in the past. If you've read my book, An American Hedge Fund, you know I lost over 500 grand personally on Signa C transactions when I believed in the company. Lost all my industry credibility too. So for me, that was, very a bad situation, but I've learned. He goes on and says, everyone told me to be careful, to wire out money, to size down, not to get ahead of myself. I knew all of this. I knew I wasn't being smart. The more money I made, the more greedy I became. I became so engulfed by trying to get to $1 million as fast as humanly possible. I wanted to become one of the few traders ever to take a $2,000 account into $1 million in less than 3 years. On my 2-year anniversary since I started trading in November, 2 years ago, I was up over 400 grand and I knew I could do it in just a few months the way I was going. I became so blinded by money that I disregarded all the risks. So this is an important paragraph because I know that I say I want to create more millionaire students, but when my students start getting close to $1 million or surpassing $1 million, like I have talks with them. Once upon a time, when Michael Good was my first millionaire student, I wasn't there for when he passed $1 million, but Tim Grittani was my second millionaire student. I flew out to his house in Ohio. I had a film crew in his face. I wanted to capture the moment he passed $1 million. And instead he lost like 50 grand because there was too much pressure. Trading is very fragile. You want to take the meat of the move. You want to focus on the patterns. But if you start thinking about milestones, if you start thinking about, I have to hit a certain number by a certain date, everything can go wrong. And that's where this is heading. He says, I have many strengths in trading, but my weaknesses are larger. I'm terrible at cutting losses. I let losers ride. I can't accept being wrong. I'm not patient for perfect setups. I move by greed. The list goes on. I knew I wasn't ready to trade the size I was trading. So again, this is a little hindsight bias. Like I knew I was doing wrong, but I kept doing it. It's also like part of like the gambler's mentality. A lot of the time, subconsciously or deep down, we know that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. But, I guess gamblers like to gunsling or play with fire. It's fun until you really get burned. But cutting losses is so important. I can't even encourage that enough. Like people say like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. Cutting losses quickly is not optional. Letting your losers run, again, most of the time, or I wouldn't even say most of the time, some of the time the stock will come back, so it's okay to let your losses run, like you think that, but that's actually the wrong lesson because you're not trading for like what could happen sometimes to protect your ego or, BS perfection streak, which is in your mind. You want to take on strategies that work the majority of the time, and you want to prevent the risk of absolute blowups. The list of big traders who have been wrong in the past and blown up and wasted months, years, decades of hard work with one bad decision is enormous. So he says, so everything fell apart this last Friday. Thursday, I got myself into a couple of poor trades on the short size with too much size. Didn't cut my loss when it wouldn't go my way. I was given a few opportunities along the way to cut the trades for break even or minimal losses. But even that wasn't enough. I needed to make money. What came next was something I haven't experienced before. Both stocks at the same time squeezed harder than ever, and I blew up my entire account. Everything I had worked so hard for the last 2 years was gone. I was left with a little bit of money, but not even enough to be over the PDT. I think that he turned basically $2,000 into like 450 grand, and then on 2 trades, I think he lost like 430. So I think he has like 20, maybe 15 grand left. That is just sad. I apologize to him. I apologize to everybody for not, I guess being stricter about cutting losses quickly. I know, like, I'm only a guy on video, and like, you can break my rules, you can listen to my rules, but I think I need to be more forceful with the importance of cutting losses quickly. I think that you really need to understand the risks. And that's why sharing stories like this, you're like, whoa, I can lose, 2 years. I mean, he's still up overall in 2 years. Like, he's still now gone from like $2,000 to 15 grand or 20 grand. So on the whole, I mean, it's still amazing, but you can't put yourself in that position to lose most or all of your money on 1 or 2 trades. You have to learn to cut losses quickly. This is why I'm so against shorting right now, because this can happen. You can't control the risk. The stocks are spiking faster. I've had a lot of former students who have like left the challenge and they're like, no, I'm going to focus purely on short selling. Like, these companies are crap. The fundamentals are crap. They all come down. The fundamentals are crap. The companies are crap, but they don't always come down. And sometimes the worst companies can turn into the best performers. I know it's counterintuitive, but that is because there are so many wannabe short sellers. And remember, the reason why I'm sharing this is, again, not because I'm bitter, not because I'm like, I told you so. Like, I want everyone to do well. It makes me sad to think that, traders are not doing well on a strategy that I popularized, but I also have to warn about this stuff. Short selling is dangerous, okay? Especially right now. In the past, when I first began teaching, maybe stocks would go from like 1 to 4 or like 3 to 12, and that was it. That was best case scenario. Then they would always come down. Me and LX21 on Profitly, I mean, he made tens of millions of dollars. I made millions of dollars shorting these plays. But lately, in 2019, 2020, we've seen stocks go from 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 2 to 40, 3 to 50. This one went from, I mean, it was a multi-day runner, but still it went from like 20 to 80 in like 15 minutes. And it was up from like single digits to 15 or 20 in the past. So like it's not just always a one-day runner. It's like some people, some short sellers will say, okay, Tim, I get it. Just don't short sell first green day. This one that really blew him up was APVO. This was, I believe, on day 3. And the other stock was ONCT, which was on day 2 of the squeeze. It's not just about not shorting first green day winners. It's understanding that short selling is ridiculously risky. There's a reason why I don't do it. I don't think newbies should be doing this. Whether you turn $2,000 into 400 grand, again, all it takes is one. And I'm glad that at least it seems like he still has some money. But you can lose more than you put in. You can go from $2,000 to 450 grand and then be in the hole and owe your broker 100 or 200 grand. Going long, you can't lose more than you put in. This is what makes short selling extra risky. So it's a crowded strategy. The stocks are spiking bigger than they've ever spiked before and faster than ever before. And I just don't think most newbies are capable of cutting losses quickly, and they're just not prepared for the speed or the volatility. So this is part of the reason, many of the reasons why I don't short sell anymore. So he goes on and he says, I've never felt so low in my life. My account, my confidence, my ego, everything was just shattered. I have no other option but to start over. I've refunded back just to over the PDT so I can keep trading. Even though this is one of the worst things that can ever happen to anyone, I believe I will be a better trader from this. This could have saved me from larger losses in the future. Even though I'm back to near zero, I still have the knowledge and experience to make it, or he says even though I'm back to zero, like I think he's like back to square one. I still have the knowledge and experience to make it all back. It's going to take some time, lots of time, but I can do it. I'll be back. So is that, yeah, his ego is shattered. It is tough, but he can make it back. And, the premise of penny stock trading is not wrong. Like short selling on its own is not wrong. Conservative short selling can work, but This is the problem that a lot of short sellers, and especially those, former students who like mock my many lessons and they're like, come on, Tim, you don't need to be so conservative. I've lost track of how many gunslingers there are where they say, Tim, you're too conservative, your rules are too conservative, and they think they found new ways of making money faster. And all I can do is warn. It's my bad. I should be more forceful in my warnings. I know that I'm pretty forceful in my teachings, but I need to pound them down your throat because I don't think you realize how right I am in my approach. I'm not saying this due to like arrogance or cockiness. This is experience. And this is just the latest gunslinger to have blown up. And they always get introspective on Twitter after they blow up. They always sound so wise after they blow up. And it's true, like the blow ups make you wiser. Like my $500,000 loss, even though I didn't lose all my money, it was like a third of my money. It ruined all my industry credibility back when I was like a wannabe hedge fund manager. And that made me wiser. But I want you to ideally be wiser before a big loss. Like you shouldn't need a gigantic, like life-shattering, ego-shattering loss to realize this. And I think I can try to help you guys ahead of time. Like amazing, potential for you if you like learn this lesson and instead of you having to lose 100 or 200 or 300 grand, you take this lesson, you remember this video lesson, and maybe if you have a 5 or 10 grand and you cut those losses, right? You have a 5 or 10 grand loss, but then you remember this video and you're like, oh, I don't want to blow up. And then instead of losing 50 or 100 or 200 grand, I can prevent that just by, explaining what can happen if you don't cut losses quickly. And I do believe he'll be back. I like the positivity at the end. Like some people lose big and then they just quit and they're just like, trading isn't for me. Trading is for everybody if you follow the rules. Trading is for nobody if you don't follow the rules. I make an analogy like if you have a beautiful Ferrari. I bought a Ferrari before in the past. I actually sold it. I don't need any nice cars anymore. That was more of a childhood dream and challenge. But if you have a Ferrari and you're going over like a cliff and there's a sign that says, sharp turn, beware, like speed limit of like 35 miles an hour, and you take your beautiful Ferrari and you're like, I love my Ferrari, let me just drive 200 miles an hour, and you go off the cliff and you die. It's not the Ferrari's fault. It's not that you're a bad driver, that you're like not meant to drive and the Ferrari is at fault. It's that you specifically ignored the road signs. You specifically saw a sign that said danger and you went straight for it 200 miles an hour. You just don't need to. We have one life and you need to protect your trading account. You need to protect your ego. You need to protect, the way that you trade. And this is why I say trade scared. Anyways, he says, this time around, I'll be focused on risk first, not the money. I won't get ahead of myself. I'll do things right. I'll wire out every month. I'll have a max loss on my account every day. I will not let this happen to me again. I can't go through this again. Thank you, everyone, for the supporting encouragement. So it's a great tweet. I thank him for his transparency. Many people who have these big losses, especially a lot of these short sellers, he's not the first short seller to have a big loss. Understand that. Many short sellers have many big losses. It's pretty crazy how many people and brokers tell me and show me these things. And then I'm like, wait a minute, 90% plus of traders lose, but on social media, 100% of traders are winning. Short sellers just aren't transparent. And I encourage you to call out any short seller or any trader who says, look, I win 100% of the time, I win 95% of the time. They're just lying. They're lying, okay? There's so many games being played in this industry, I can't even begin to say it. But you should learn from somebody who shows their track record, like me and my top students. We show all of our trades publicly. But more than just showing our trades, you understand risk. It doesn't matter how much money you make if you're risking blowing up. And I know there's a few short sellers out there. And again, I'm not going to embarrass them. I'm not trying to rub salt in their wounds. But I see these short sellers where in their head, logically, they're like, these companies are crap, these stocks are crap, the fundamentals are crap, they have to go down. And so they take these big risks and they try to make excuses for the risks that they take and they blame it on bad fundamentals. But you're still taking the big risks. I don't care if there's a 99.9% probability of a stock going down. What if that 0.1% happens and you blow up and you lose everything? It's all about controlling your risk. So I like what he said at the end where he's like, I'm going to not focus on the money, but focus on the risks first. That's what you got to do. No trade for me is worth blowing up. You always have to consider the downside. You always have to consider the risks before you risk your hard-earned money. Like people say, oh, I can't believe you missed that trade, Tim. And I'm like, well, it was moving too fast or whatever, or it spiked too fast and I missed out because I can't control my risk. I don't want to get into a stock where I can't control the risk. Not even just me personally. I donate 100% of my trading profits to charity, but I don't want to take that kind of trade because I don't want anybody else to learn how to take that kind of trade. I'm a teacher and I recognize that my actions, people are like, oh, this is how Tim trades, this is how Tim doesn't trade. I don't want to promote a flawed strategy, a risky strategy, where even if you can grow your money very quickly, you can lose it all in a day or two or 1 or 2 trades. That's a poor risk-reward strategy. So I know a lot of these short sellers talk a big game. You don't have to study. All the fundamentals are just bad. It's so easy. Learn from this. Learn from this mistake. Again, I appreciate his transparency. I think that he will be back, and hopefully he has learned a valuable lesson. And in the grand scheme of things, a 400 grand loss, if you make 40 million over the course of your life, like this might be the best 400 grand loss ever. Just like my 500 grand loss was the best loss that I ever took, and it snapped me into discipline. But you do not have to take a big loss if you learn from my story, if you learn from this guy's story, if you learn from other gunslingers. This happens again and again, and it's just a sad thing for me to read. Whether he's a former student or a current student, I mean, he's a former student, but like, I still don't like it. It's not like I'm like, oh, I told you so. Like I want to be right. Like I don't want anybody to blow up. I don't like that. I don't think that's good for them. That's good for anybody in trading. And yet, I'm conflicted because I know how disciplined he's going to be from now on. So this probably was necessary as part of his journey, but it's not necessary for you if you can learn these lessons before you have those big losses, or even if you've had a big loss. And I'm sure some people watching this have had a big loss and they're just like nodding their head and they're like, yeah, Tim, you're like exactly right. It's not about being exactly right or not. It's about protecting your risk and protecting your account. So leave a comment underneath this video. Say, I will cut losses quickly if hopefully this guy's loss or my big loss in the past has, helped you learn. We're going to include a link below. If you want to join my challenge, that will help keep you disciplined. If you want to read my best-selling book, we'll give you a free copy below. You can buy it on Amazon for 20 bucks, or, you can read it for free. I just want you to learn from that. In my best-selling book, I talk about my gains and my losses, so you can learn from my wins and losses. Click the subscribe button, click the like button. Let me get some more videos on YouTube. If you like these videos, you tell me. But cut losses quickly, stay safe, stay disciplined. Don't risk blowing up on any one trade or 2 trades. It's just not worth the risk.